In the depths of our oceans, a creature so strange and intelligent has been whispered to be not of this world. It isn't only a conspiracy theory or something dreamt up in a basement, it comes from a scientific paper that was released in 2018. In that paper, scientists made the argument that because octopuses sprang up out of nowhere about 500 million years ago and are so different from anything else alive today, the best explanation is that a batch of proto-octopus eggs from another world came here, frozen on the side of a comet that then splashed down into the ocean, and that's when they warmed up and hatched. But how likely is that? And just how alien are octopuses? An alien world. It's believed that all of these species, along with other cephalopods like squids, nautiluses, and cuttlefish, may have evolved from a common ancestor called Nectocaris teryx about 500 million years ago during the Cambrian explosion. Before that, evolution was moving pretty slow. It took nearly 3 billion years for the first bacteria to evolve into more complex multicellular life, but during the Cambrian period, things really kicked into high gear, with millions, maybe even billions of new species popping up, from mammals and reptiles to fish to chordates to spiders and insects to arthropods and mollusks. Nectocaris was one of those early mollusks, and some scientists think that it could be the ancestor of all modern octopuses. The tricky part is that we can't totally be sure, and there's not much in the fossil record which explains where the ancestor came from. The first animal that's definitely considered an octopus ancestor is Calypsimapodi bedini, a type of vampropod, soft-bodied, many-legged creature with ink sacs. What's interesting about this one is that it had 10 tentacles instead of the usual 8, but it did have 2 rows of suckers, just like modern octopuses. A long time ago, these vampropods split into modern octopuses, and the oldest known type of squid, the vampire squid, which by the way is still swimming around in our oceans today as a sort of living fossil. But back to our octopuses. From Bedini onwards, octopuses have branched out to over 300 species, from the tiny star-sucker pygmy octopus at just 2.5 centimeters, which is about the size of a bottle cap, to the giant Pacific octopus, which can grow up to 6 meters long and weigh 90 kilograms. And what makes them alien isn't just that their ancestors showed up seemingly out of nowhere 500 million years ago. Soft-bodied creatures are tough to find in fossil records that old, so we could have just missed them. It's also that what they've become since then is so completely different from anything else on the planet that they just seem to be out of place. So let's break down their amazing weirdness into 2 parts. First, the things that make them seem strange and alien, and second, the things that make them feel a bit too human for comfort. A little too alien. Where the East China Sea meets the Pacific Ocean, you'll find the Japanese island of Okinawa, a hotspot for scuba divers with crystal clear waters where you can get a glimpse at the sandy ocean floor scattered with pebbles and remnants of old coral. This area is known as the benthic zone, a part of the ocean where the bottom dwellers hang out. But when you look down, it might seem like there's not a whole lot going on, just sand and some pebbles. But not everything down there is what it seems. If you pay close enough attention, you may spot a patch of white seabed gently moving. Look even closer and you may catch the camouflaged outline of what's known as the friendly octopus. The reason that they're so hard to spot on the seafloor is camouflage. They don't just change color to fit in with the surroundings like a chameleon, they actually change their skin texture as well. Our sleeping friendly octopus isn't just a flat patch of white on the ocean floor. It uses special skin cells called chromatophores, iridophores, and papilla to make it look exactly like the pile of pebbles and rubble that surrounds it, blending in almost perfectly. How they turn invisible is one of the traits people say is particularly alien. That's because of how fast the camouflage works and how it works, which comes down to a quirk of the octopus itself. They have a lot of genes, over 30,000 of them in fact, which is 10,000 more than a human being. But even weirder still, the octopus can improve its own genetic code by manipulating its RNA. If DNA is the blueprint for life, RNA is the messenger that takes those instructions and makes things happen. Many creatures, including humans, can swap non-coding RNA using enzymes. Non-coding RNA is important and it plays a very important role in the body, but it doesn't act as a template for creating proteins, what's known as translation. Coding RNA does translate into proteins, and almost no creature on Earth can manipulate them, and that takes time and evolution, unless you're an octopus, that is. Octopuses can actively give their RNA instructions, which lets them change their bodies almost on the spot. And that's how the octopus camouflages itself so well. Not only that, but say for example, if it ends up in extremely cold weather, it can actually alter its genetic code to adapt its nerve endings to the freezing temperatures. When the friendly octopus becomes disturbed, all three of its hearts, yes, I said three, begin to beat faster. The two brachial hearts pump blood to its gills to help them process oxygen more efficiently, and the one larger heart pumps the blood around the rest of the soft body. Their blood, by the way, it's not like ours. It's blue-green because instead of using iron to transport oxygen, octopuses use a copper-based molecule, which works better in the cold and low-oxygen environments like the ocean floor. After a stretch, that friendly octopus opens its huge alien eyes. Different octopus species see differently depending on their habitat, but there are a few traits that they all share. If the octopus feels threatened, it can widen its pupils to fill almost the entire socket as a way to scare off a predator. They can also dilate their pupils like a cat. So if the friendly octopus is awake during the day and decides to pop up to the surface, maybe even take a little stroll, it can narrow its pupils to reduce the light. That's right, they're a deep-sea creature that can walk on land. For short periods of time, they can use their tentacles to crawl over rocks, small islands, and even people's boats if they think that's the best way to find food. But back to the eyes. Octopuses can also move their eyes independently by up to 80 degrees in any direction, which means that they can keep an eye on several things at once and have nearly 360-degree vision. Another alien trait is how they may perceive color. Octopuses seem to have just one type of light receptor in their eyes, which means that they should only be able to see things in black and white. However, studies have shown they can also detect blues and yellows, and some research would suggest that they may even see more than that, which does make sense. I mean, how else would they know what color to change into when they're disguising themselves? The current theory is that they can see more colors by adjusting the depth in their eyeball. Octopus eyeballs aren't round like most other animals, they're actually dumbbell-shaped. As light passes through them, they act like a prism, breaking the light into different colors before reaching the retina. It also helps them to detect the orientation of the light waves, which is handy for navigation, and because most octopuses are nocturnal, it helps them to spot prey in the dark. After waking up, the friendly octopus will spend most of the night searching the ocean floor for food. As it swims around, it keeps itself upright using something called statocytes. These are ears, but instead of being a hearing organ that also helps with balance, like with most animals, they work backwards as balancing organs that can also hear. Statocytes are little structures that look like sacs and contain hairs that surround a central mass, and when an octopus moves, that mass pushes against the hairs and sends a signal to let it know which way is up. The movement of these hairs in the liquid also helps it hear. Some octopuses can actually detect very low frequencies over long distances. But even though it has this alien natural gyroscope, the friendly octopus doesn't like to swim. Whenever it does, its heart stops beating, and that's not really great for it in the long run. Instead, it actually prefers to walk or crawl on the ocean floor, overturning rocks and using its suckers to feel and taste its surroundings. That's another alien trait. Octopuses can taste with their arms. More precisely, they have taste receptors in their suckers, which help them to figure out if something's delicious or something to avoid when they touch it. So as the friendly octopus makes its way across the ocean floor, it's not only hunting for food, it's actually on the lookout for the best flavors. When an octopus spots or tastes something like a crab, a worm, or a little shrimp, it will use its tentacles to grab it. There are a range of techniques that it uses to catch its food. Sometimes they just wait, camouflaged, and ambush their prey, while other times they'll go on a hunt, flipping over rocks, shuffling through plants, and even digging around on the ocean floor to find the next meal. Once the friendly octopus has found its food, it will then pull it into its beak. Octopus beaks have a slight underbite, with the upper part being a little bit bigger than the lower, and that makes it easier to trap and swallow food. It will then use a venomous saliva to stun the prey before gulping it down. Some octopus venom, like that of the blue-ringed octopus, can actually be deadly to humans. Octopuses also have a pretty big brain compared to their bodies, but it's a pretty alien brain as well. For starters, it's shaped like a donut, or at least one of its brains is. 2/3 of its neurons are in its arms, which basically means it has 9 brains. There's a mini brain in each arm, plus the main donut-shaped brain in its head, and the arm brains handle taste, reflexes, movement, and everything else that its tentacles do, so the head brain can focus on being smart. Sometimes an octopus will run into another one, and that's when we see just how friendly they can be. If the neighbor is a threat, they'll have some weird alien defenses to fight them off. For example, if prey or an aggressive opponent, which can be the same thing as octopuses have been known to eat each other, or to grab hold of a tentacle, they can detach it and swim away, but they'll then grow a new one back. If they get trapped by a predator, they're amazing escape artists. Octopuses can manipulate their bodies like almost no other creature on Earth. And like all octopuses, our friendly octopus can fit inside pretty much anything because its body is almost 100% soft tissue, allowing it to squeeze through pretty much any gap and change shape. If you keep them in captivity, even the tiniest crack is enough for them to slip through, and if it gets backed into a corner, it will find a way past or through. But what if the neighbor's not a threat and just wants to mate? If that's the case, both are willing, and they'll begin a strange alien courtship. They'll start off by touching tentacles, resting together and looking at each other, almost as though they're gazing into each other's eyes, while releasing mating pheromones into the water. They then entwine their limbs, moving closer together, and suddenly the male swims away. He's not changed his mind though. It's all just part of the performance. He'll swim around the female, change color and skin texture in a display to prove his fitness, and then the two octopuses come back together again and mate, and that's where they get a bit otherworldly. One of the male octopus's arms is an organ called hectocotylus. On this arm, he stores rows of sperm ready for the female. Sometimes he'll put it inside a cavity in the female's body where she'll bury it into the lining of her oviductal glands, while at other times the male might break it off and the female will swim away with it, saving it for when she's ready. Days to months later, the octopus is ready to lay its eggs, and there's a good chance they'll be fertile. First, it creates a safe place, like a den or a rack to hide them under, and then the eggs are laid. Once laid, the female will release the sperm it stored or take out her partner's arm to fertilize the eggs. For anything up to 10 months, she'll nurture them, protect them, and use her tentacles to push water over them so that they take in more oxygen. All threats are beaten back, and she'll lose weight because she can't go on a hunt. Her skin will loosen and turn pale, and her eyes will dim, and soon she finds it a struggle to even camouflage herself, but she never gives up. Some octopuses, like a deep-sea octopus known as octomom, have been observed brooding their eggs for more than 4 years. Eventually, those eggs will hatch. Tiny octopus babies that look more like plankton are covered in a strange type of hair and like a little broom that covers their skin. These hairs are known as colicar organs, and they only have them when they're young. Nobody knows what they're for because it's almost impossible to study the early life of the octopus, but it's probably something alien. Once the babies are released, the female octopus's life will also come to an end, and the male probably passed away soon after mating himself. The brooding process can take the entire last quarter of an octopus's life. She'll bury herself one last time, camouflage as best she can, and then leave the planet forever. That's what makes an octopus alien. Unusual traits that set them apart from any other creature on Earth and that are hard to explain through evolution. But there's also something else that still makes them stranger. Not how different they are, but how much they're like us. A little too human. Octopuses have a few traits that don't make sense, ones that make them seem almost human, even though the last common ancestor of humans and octopuses, assuming they didn't come from space, must have been alive well over 500 million years ago. To begin, that patch of white that we found on the ocean floor near Japan wasn't a friendly octopus waiting for prey, it was asleep, because octopuses sleep just like we do. They might even dream. Friendly octopuses have been kept in captivity, and their sleep patterns have been studied quite a bit. Research shows that their brain activity during rest is similar to ours, with part of the time being in a deep sleep phase, and a part like REM phase where the brain is active as if they're awake, but they're still unconscious. In humans, this is associated with dreaming. It's believed that all octopuses sleep in phases, and as far as we know, they're the only invertebrates to do that. They also have some human-like physiology. Despite the 3 hearts and blue-green blood, they have a closed circulatory system, and even though their eyes are strange and alien, they have an iris, retina, and a lens just like ours. These traits, well, they're usually only found in vertebrates. But what really makes them a little too human for comfort are those big brains I mentioned earlier. Octopuses have a set of genes that are really similar to ours, which helps them and us produce the neurons we need to think. That means that they can solve tricky puzzles and work through mazes in order to get food, and even use tools to tackle problems. There are even stories of pet octopuses sneaking over to a fish tank when no one's watching, lifting up the lid and snacking on a fish, then placing the lid back and sneaking back again. Octopuses have been climbing onto crab boats to steal crabs right out of the traps as well. They can be tricky in the wild. While hunting, some friendly octopuses have been observed sneaking up behind their prey, giving them a tap on the shoulder, and then they dart straight into another tentacle. Another species have been known to carry firearms. The common blanket octopus is immune to the stings of the Portuguese man-o'-war, and so they use their tentacles, once they've taken them off, as a weapon against predators, prey, and other octopuses they don't like. But they also have other tricks up their sleeves. One is, of course, their ink, which they can spray into the water and block an attacker's vision and escape route, and they've also been known to throw rocks at an attacker, even gathering stones around their homes specifically to be used as projectiles. Because octopuses, well, they are clever enough to build homes. Some of them, rather than lying flat on the bottom of the ocean in disguise, will actually build a burrow. Others make a den out of anything they find around, like an old shell, a hollow rock, bottle tops, plastic waste, and even discarded flip-flops. They've even been seen spotted using tools to improve their homes, like stones to build doors or protective shields to cover the entrance. In 2009, some veined octopuses were spotted gathering coconut shells, cleaning them by spraying them with water, and then turning them into a shelter. All of it makes them appear far more smart than earthly evolution alone could explain, but the intelligence that really makes some scientists think they come from another world is how well they can talk. When octopuses meet, generally they will tolerate each other. They prefer to be solitary and on their own, but if they're forced to share a den or a tank, they're just fine with that. They'll hang out together, strike up conversations, not in the human sense, but octopuses can communicate in pretty complex ways. When a friendly octopus approaches a neighbor, they use a mixture of skin color, skin texture, posture, and movement to talk to their new acquaintance. Some will have been known to have flashed colors and patterns on their skin, so the chats could be pretty intricate. There are even species of octopus that send different signals to octopuses as if they can tell one neighbor from the next. The most common conversations are probably "I'm bigger and more important than you, so get out of my way," or "Are you interested in mating?" If an octopus bumps into someone they know, they may get excited and display colors that mean they're happy to see them. Octopuses in captivity and in the wild have been observed getting excited when they meet creatures they recognize, even other humans. They may also want to play with their friends. They're playful and love to have what looks like fun with other octopuses and random objects that they find, and it all depends on their personality. That's the other human-like trait that octopuses share that pretty much no other invertebrate does: a personality. Some are nice and playful and open, while others are shy and keep to themselves, and some can be downright mean. One named Lucretia McEvil by researchers wreaked havoc inside of its tank for seemingly no reason. At the University of Otago, there was an octopus that decided it did not like one of the researchers and proved it by squirting water at her every time she walked by. So, somehow, they evolved enough intelligence to know how to build a home, use tools and weapons, solve puzzles, and a level of consciousness which allows them to communicate and develop distinct personalities, despite splitting from every other animal that can do those things at least 500 million years ago, a time when our ancestors were little more than worms. So how did such an alien-looking creature become so much like us? The alien within. It may seem like octopuses are pretty alien. They can change color and shape, have 9 brains and 3 hearts, taste and mate with their arms, and let females swim off with their sexual organs. And they're also really smart, perhaps even smart enough to be from outer space. But did they actually come from space, or did they just evolve in a weird way? Scientists who support the alien theory point to the odd genetics of an octopus, saying that unless all the new genes expressed in the squid and octopus lineages arose from simple mutations of existing genes in either the squid or in other organisms sharing the same habitat, there's surely no way by which this large transition can be explained by conventional neo-Darwinian processes. They argue that the only good explanation is that their ancestors, or at least some of their genes, arrived on Earth through a meteorite or comet in a process called panspermia. Those who argue against them point that octopus's nervous systems only split from squids about 135 million years ago, long after the Cambrian explosion, so we have a record of that change happening. But maybe squids are aliens too. Whatever they are, octopuses, like so many other species, are under threat from overfishing, pollution, and rising sea temperatures. Illegal poaching doesn't help, and octopuses, even when they're protected, are still hunted for their meat, fueling an illegal tentacle trade in places like Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. It's big business and makes a lot of money, and if we don't figure out how to stop it, these amazing creatures might be facing extinction. Not just the octopuses, though. They play an important role in the ecosystem, keeping certain species in check while being food for dolphins, whales, sharks, and some birds. And if you want to know more about why losing predators like the octopus would be disastrous, be sure to click on the video in the middle. Make sure that you like this video and share it with your friend, and while you're here, subscribe to the channel so that you'd never miss another great video like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.